been putting up a solar system in order to save some energy, but in order to connect the solar system to some car batteries, or well, not car batteries, but deep cycle batteries, I want to use these tags, some big tags, in order to connect to this solar wire, which is quite a thick core, in order to take a lot of current. But when I connect them up, I'd like to actually solder them in place. I don't have a crimp for these tags. I think usually they're crimped with a quite heavy duty crimping tool. So I'd rather solder them in place. But in order to do that, I need to prepare this wire and actually use some heavy tools to actually do the soldering. So first of all, I'm going to show how I usually prepare the wire. So at this end I've already sort of cut to the proper shape, but this end I've got this old piece of, because this is a wire I'm reusing, and it's not very well formed at that end. Now I don't tend to use pliers to actually cut this, because it tends to crush the wire, crush it flat. So what I use is a Dremel with a carbon cutting tool on the end, and I just cut through the wire and it gives a much better form on the end. So I'll do that right now. And that way the cable still remains oval, and so when I actually come to actually stripping back the cable and put it into this crimping tag, it actually will fill this hole a lot better than if I tried to cut it with some pliers and crushed it to a more of a like an oval kind of shape. So the next stage is to actually strip this back a little bit, and so that it will go into here about that kind of depth. And to do that, I will be using my cutting pliers, and I just make a mark around there with the cutting pliers like that. So now I know I can see where I need to strip back to all the way around. And I'll use my cutting pliers just to, because it's thick insulation, without being careful not to cut into the actual wire itself. I cut through the insulation like this. Again, there's probably a proper stripping tool for these, but I have to just make do, and I can pull off that part, and as you can see it's double insulated, so I have to do the same with this insulation in here. Again, I don't want to cut through any of the wires. It's no big deal if I cut through a couple of strands, because there's a lot of strands on this particular wire. And I can use a little bit up here just to pull that off, and that then strips that back nicely, and I don't think I've lost any strands of wire. I can just twist it round a bit, and what I need to do next with this is to actually tin that before I go to actually solder it into the tag. So in order to tin the end, I'm going to use some flux, which I've got a long time ago. I'm slowly getting through it, so I've put some flux on the end of this screwdriver just to make it easier to just apply some to the end. And that helps the solder flow into the actual core of the wire when I actually do it. And then the other thing you need, now this is just my standard gauge solder. It's a bit too thin for this kind of job, but so it means I'm going to have to use quite a fair length of it. And also you need a big soldering iron to hold the heat. Now the tip on this one clearly needs to be replaced, as it's deteriorated a bit, but that actually helps me do this as well, because it'll actually hold a bit of this solder on the end, and then when I apply it, all I have to do is apply it like this, hold it a little bit, and just to get the heat into the wire, and then drag it across it. It actually tins that quite well, and then twist it round and just do the same to other parts of the wire, just to get it all the way around. So just bring it a bit closer, so you can see there where I've tinned it, and I still have to go around and tin the rest of that. I'll work my way around and tin all of that wire. The next thing I do is I use a butane torch just to heat up the tag and apply some solder in it. When I do this, it's gonna get the tag up to quite a temperature, and also the helping hand which I'm using. So don't touch that after having soldered it. But the first thing I need to do is put some solder inside. So I just heat up the tag to get the solder flowing. And you need to put a fair amount of solder in there. Once it's up to temperature, you can take the heat off of it so you don't get the temperature too high, because otherwise it'll take a long time to cool down. Try not to melt my camera as well. And I need to put a fair amount in here because I'm only using small grade solder. Okay, so that once I've done that, I can bring my wire in and just apply it to melt the solder inside again, and apply the wire in there, and it just take a little while for it to cool down enough to make the bond. And there it is. And you've got to remember not to touch the helping hands, because that's going to be very hot, and also the tags could be hot for a while. But that makes quite a good clean joint around the tag. But you've got to make sure you use enough solder for it to take really well in there. And you can put some heat shrink sleeving around the outside as well to insulate it.